everybody. My name's Tony Cardenas, and this is the Indy Real Estate Market Weekly Podcast. Today, we have a special guest on the show, Angel Dean, managing broker of the FC Tucker Carmel office here in Carmel, Indiana. Along with us is Shelly Walters with FC Tucker, Kyle Morse with FC Tucker. How's everybody doing, Shelly?
Everybody, Shelly. I'm doing wonderful and so excited to have Angel here. She is my managing broker as well as Kyle's managing broker, and she has a wealth of information for us. So what we're going to talk about today with her is just basically how the market has changed in your opinion. What are you seeing differently with agents, what they're dealing with as compared to maybe like even 4 years ago, because it's such a different market and we always talk about it. But, your boots on the ground constantly of hearing the agents complain or ask questions or whatever.
Challenges.
So, right. Everything, because she does take on a lot. She's awesome. She is always even-keeled and always gets information for everybody as soon as she can. So what would you say is your number one issue, the most problems agents are seeing in today's market compared to about 3 or 4 years ago?
Well, first, can I say thank you so much for inviting me to join you guys today. I appreciate the opportunity, and of course, think so highly of you and Kyle, and appreciate all that you do and bring to our industry, to our company, most specifically to our office and to our clients. But I feel like in the last couple of years, we really have seen dynamic changes in the market. There was a time when we would see houses be on the market 30 or 45 days. And the truth is, when working with buyers right now, I feel like the biggest obstacle is that you can't operate fast enough in some instances to get out there. I too think that there's more cash in our market than we've ever seen in the past. And for buyers who don't have the luxury of cash, I think it's very hard for them to prevail in the multiple offer scenarios. And I feel that's one of the complaints that we're hearing most often right now is for especially first-time home buyers. They're really struggling to achieve the American dream.
Well, yeah, along with the interest rates climbing, low inventory. There are a lot of challenges out there with the not only of the interest rates for the mortgage, but interest rates on other debt that they're carrying. And some of these future buyers can't get qualified because of some other debt they have to make the ratios go up, and that's hurting them incredibly.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have interest rates climbing on credit cards that people started out at 8, 9, 12%. Some of them are hitting 22 right now because they, as soon as you go over the 30% threshold on a credit card, the rate it climbs like a rocket.
Yeah.
And then they don't know what to do, and then they need to figure out what they need to get their debts paid down so they can get in line to get a pre-approval.
Well, and we got rid of a lot of the institutional buyers. I think everybody was really excited for that to happen because interest rates went up, but now it's just competitive amongst them as for first-time home buyers or depending on the price point, and it still just caused the same problem. I think we have a better chance of getting a property, but I still think, to your point, it's competitive, especially if you don't have any of that extra money or whatever. And there's a lot more of those houses going on the market, and they're not getting taken as quickly. But I think what I'm seeing is some of those houses, people who wait 7 days to make sure it's not competitive. And then in the 7 to 10 day period, you have a slew of buyers out there, and it's competitive the following weekend because they all waited. So it's
it'll always become competitive. It just depends on what day it will.
Well, you got a lot of buyers out here too that have a 2.5 to 2.75 to 3.25% interest rate.
Sellers.
Sellers, that why should I give up this fantastic deal I have right now, because so much is going to equity in this scenario over a 30-year fix or 15, whatever they got in their mortgage. Why would they give that up to get a premium price on their house right now, which they probably would? Okay, but then they got to go into the market where you're in the 6s to 7% range, and they're blowing a lot of unnecessary equity for a whole bunch of nothing, maybe a little bit more room.
Yeah. So, Angel, what do you normally tell to the buyers when they do, or the agents who come in and say, there's too many cash buyers? I mean, we can't control that.
We can't control that. That's right. And yes, to Kyle's point, some of them are institutional. Some of them are not. I mean, again, it's more cash than I've ever seen in our market, more cash offers, more people willing to, even in the case of using a mortgage, willing to pay the gap. So in the event the appraisal comes in low, we are seeing some buyers who are are signing up and saying, if it comes in low, however low it is, we're willing to pay the difference in cash. Some don't have quite that much luxury, but even to say if the appraisal comes in low, we're still willing to pay $10,000 more than an appraiser determines the property to be worth. In the grand scheme of things for buyers, I think right now it's a good time to be saving up as much money as you can. I feel like buyers should possibly be considering properties that need to be improved.
Right.
I feel like that's where they might be able to prevail. But especially you look, at the Hamilton County market and $400,000 and below, which is what would be considered affordable housing.
Right.
The likelihood of a first-time home buyer prevailing in that negotiation, if they don't have, one, the luxury of cash, two, the willingness to beat any other offers coming in, or three, consider waiving the inspection or at least using some sort of language that caps, maybe they won't ask for any single line item that can be repaired or remedied for $1,000 or less, or even a lump sum in the event that the defects can be remedied cumulative for $5,000 or less, then they won't offer. But all of those, you think about first-time home buyers 5 years ago, how many of us would have been advising to a buyer that they be willing to pay more than appraised value?
Zero.
Right.
Zero.
How many of us
That
would
would have
have
just been like the
Unheard
stupidest
of.
thing we would
Unheard
ever.
of.
Yeah, why don't we just pay more for the house than we know it's worth?
Unheard
just,
of.
Just sign right here. Right.
I've seen transactions fall apart because the appraisal was $1,000 low. I mean, and you think
Right.
about right now,
House is
again,
right, $1,000 low. I
right.
do remember those.
And the
days.
parties couldn't work that out.
They couldn't
Well,
work
here's
it out.
here's the one thing too I always state. So we have seen when they make their offers that they'll come in and they'll say, I'll do a appraisal gap insurance of $20,000 or something like that. They'll write down, unfortunately, anything that will make them get the deal. But you as a listing agent need to contact the lender and say, do they have enough funds for the down payment plus another $20,000 cash if this appraisal is 100% below by $20,000?
Absolutely.
Many times when you call the lender, they're like, oh, they barely have enough for the down payment. What they're putting on the paper does not mean that that's what they can do.
Well, and even then, like I've seen it get toxic where somebody wants to do that. But then since they paid $20,000 or $50,000 over, they want a lot on inspection, regardless of what they put as the cap, right? And so they'll just ask for very large items. And so they feel like they've really put their best foot forward and they really would like a little bit in return. And then the sellers are not as willing all of a sudden because they're major items, right? It's like, hey, here's a roof or something like of that nature, or hey, we need all the drainage fixed or something like that. And so just because of that appraisal gap coverage, it can create this other problem then on the inspection end as well,
Right.
of like, hey, we gave a lot, can we get a little back here? And it just becomes this whole stancing and positioning.
Well, intricate details that I would argue are so important. So, Shelly, to your point, when somebody says, I'm able to cover a $20,000 gap, well, we want proof of funds. We want to see, to your point, the down payment and the proof of funds together. But then, Kyle, to your point, the buying it on paper, as the escalation clause first came out, that's how I felt 90% of the time. People would put in a really high cap. So maybe on a $300,000 house, they fill out the form indicating that they're willing to escalate and beat any other offer by $1,000 up to $350.
Right.
And yet, if their intent is to roll in the difference to their mortgage, well, that means it's going to have to appraise for $350 for that to work out.
Absolutely.
And so I think a lot of people who, on the listing side, it's important to understand the value of that, just the written agreement versus the true ability of the buyer. And if they don't have gap coverage, them being willing to pay $50,000 more than it's listed for doesn't help. Mm-hmm. They would have to have that money to be able to do that, not just put it in the contract.
Absolutely.
I think it comes a lot down to like the conversations we're having with our buyers. I mean, so it's really hard to get in some of these price points if you're a first-time home buyer. But like one of the things that I do see has happened a lot over the past year is like Indianapolis has become so commutable. And so people are being able to move out to Greenfield and they can, you have a little bit better luck. You're going into Greenfield, you're going into Whitestown, you're going into Sheridan, Anderson, Pendleton, all these. Right. And so you're stepping out there because you can get into the city easier. But as a result, all of those property values have gone up significantly, right?
Big time, yes.
And so it's like, where are we going to end up pushing Indy too, right? Like, is one of these days, we're looking at like Richmond is now a suburb. I mean, that's, obviously drastic, but
Right.
But I also know, like, as somebody who lives a little bit further out myself, because all of that is going on out there, like all of the infrastructure and all the amenities are also going out there. So that's one of the things we always talk to about buyers is, okay, so if we're having problems within the loop or whatever it may be because of our price point, like, why are we dialed into this? Like, what does a commute actually look like? What do you get? All this other things. Because, a lot of times these days, we're moving out of necessity because that the 2 years of where everybody were moving out of luxury is kind of dissipated, right? So now people are moving out of necessity. What do you really need, and how do we fill that need?
Yeah. So in regards to the buyers that we can't get houses for, what's your, yeah, I mean, it's true. What else are you seeing as a major issue that agents are tackling today that you didn't see about 3 years ago?
Well, to what I mentioned a few minutes ago, really understanding the gap coverage and what it means. This year, IAR released a new form specific to the gap coverage. I feel in the last couple of years, there has been somewhat of a gray area. And while at that point, IAR, I think maybe early last year, released language via an email to the members suggesting if you are looking at gap coverage, here's a language that would cover you. And it was distributed with some frequently asked questions and kind of breaking down the scenario and exactly what does it mean, what is the obligation of the buyer, and what is the obligation of the seller. This year, they kicked it up a notch and actually developed a form, the GAP Addendum, and I would encourage everyone to use it. I would argue this. There are many members out there who I think are not aware of that form.
Right.
And so they're still free-forming. So a fair number of them maybe weren't even aware of the language, the advice that was given by the IAR legal counsel, but one step further now aren't aware that the form is out there. And I would argue that the form breaks it down for both parties so that it's clear to the seller what the obligation of the buyer is, and it's clear to the buyer what the obligation of the seller is. So I think, being knowledgeable as agents, both on the buyer side and the listing side, we have to be knowledgeable about the forms, the protections that are out there for our clients. We've got to make sure that we're coaching them on how to put their best foot forward, how to strengthen their offer, what they can do. You think about net proceeds to the seller. Any little thing that could ultimately impact the net to the seller, again, where the buyer has some luxury of being able maybe to take on some of the expenses that a seller typically would, I think overall can help the seller net more, which again would strengthen the buyer's offer. So maybe the buyer offering to pay for the owner's policy, maybe the buyer not asking for prorated taxes, which again, 5 years ago, I had never seen an offer where the buyer did not ask for prorated taxes. But 12 months of property taxes, impacts the seller's net for sure.
Absolutely.
You got to know how to do that math.
You've got to know how to do that math. That's right.
Well, and it's also, as a listing agent, looking at every single part of that, because I've always said for my buyers, whatever you put in number-wise for the offer or escalation clause or whatever, that's where many people just start doing the math. And they don't go into if they took the closing fee and they took in taxes or whatever. So I highly recommend that if you're going to start taking away the closing fee and you're going to take away the taxes, that just help a little bit more in that email out and saying, here's our offer. We are foregoing $2,500 worth of cash. We're foregoing the selling closing fee, which is about $200. Because I think psychology tells us they're looking at the one number, but somebody needs to sit down and show what that really means in all 8 pages.
I don't think if you don't send it in the email, I'm not sure every single agent would understand all of that.
Not at all.
And not as like a slight against them, just due to experience with it, quite honestly. So anything you can do in an email to kind of surmise your offer, I think is hugely beneficial.
Which is where I say, make your offer. This is just how I do it. Make the offer instead of saying I'm going to pay $250 and you can take all those fees away. Pay $256, because psychologically the seller is going to look at that number. So instead of taking all these fees off after you made the offer, make the offer higher. Don't take it off. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. Kyle, I would say too, maybe I'm sure are practitioners out there who may or may not truly understand the impact of those different...
Especially taxes.
Yeah, especially taxes and even the owner's policy. I would guess there are many listing agents out there who, at the time of getting their first accepted offer, failed to do estimated proceeds and may have been in a sticky situation with the seller. If you've ever done it once, you'll do estimated proceeds for the rest of your life with every offer and every counteroffer, every listing appointment. But in the grand scheme of things, the other thing I would say is, even for the ones who do understand what the impact is. Again, I keep referencing 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I had never seen an offer where the buyer didn't ask for prorated taxes. I had never seen an offer where the buyer offered to pay for the owner's policy, or, any of those little things that can make a difference. So I think even drawing their attention to it. You think about how many times you've read a purchase agreement in the last 5 years, and some of those fields that just have always been prorated taxes, or have always been the seller to pay the owner's policy. Right. I think, or have always been the survey location report paid for. I feel like some of that you almost like, as you're reading through a purchase agreement, it's almost like on
autopilot.
Autopilot. Yes. Thank you. I couldn't think of the term. Yes, exactly. So I think even for those reasons, to point out this is what the buyer is willing to do to strengthen their offer and increase the net proceeds to the seller.
Yeah, and I think when you read all that and you take it into account, like, I don't know, me personally, I feel like I can take on the tone of what the buyer's intent is as far as like how this transaction is and all of those things, because there's a lot of details in an offer that can be really put in a sympathetic way towards the seller. And if you don't know how to read that correctly, you can misread it, quite honestly, the tone of the transaction.
Yeah.
So I know a question a lot of people have out there and everything. What do you see numbers-wise for agents? We know that they continue to take classes to come and join us, but are you seeing in the market right now, compared to 5 years ago, the standard amount of agents that would be coming into the market in a year compared to now, or vice versa? What are you seeing in regards to agents leaving the market in today's world compared to an average in 5 years ago?
Yeah, so I would say, as a generalization, when the market looks good, everybody and their brother thinks they want to sell real estate. They're looking at real estate agents and thinking, wow, they're like making the big bucks. They're all driving fancy cars. They think about an average commission and think, wow, because they don't technically understand how agents are paid. So when the market appears to be good, I feel like we see a surge in agents getting into our business. And then in the same vein, when the business becomes more difficult. You think back to 2007, 8, 9.
Oh, yes.
The number of agents in our industry in this area.
Major decline.
Yeah, major decline. Even all of the brokerages were running lean. We were lower on agents, lower on productivity, lower on everything. I would say this, in 2021 and 2022, I feel like we saw a spike in the number of agents.
Absolutely.
Having said that,
but here we are in 2023.
And we're starting to see a decline again.
And you're starting to see a major decline in the market.
Yeah.
Okay, which if it's the agents that weren't doing a lot anyway, then it helps all the agents that are trying to do something.
That's exactly
and
right.
get more, it helps them even out their business a little bit, get more opportunities to talk to buyers and sellers.
Yes.
Yeah, but it makes me sad, though, because a lot of those agents are future good agents, right? It's just a tough market, and it comes down to leadership and a lot of things like that.
Which is what you do so well.
No, thank you so much.
Her and Jen, Jen's sitting over there too.
Jen.
I'm not the agent I am today without Angel and Jen. That's why I know contracts the way I do. It's because of what they've taught me and the leadership they have in this office.
Well, and I think
plug,
Thank you.
sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's something to also know, that if you are a newer agent or even an older agent, that you're having issues or questions or whatever, to reach out to your brokers. Do not to try to do it on your own, because you guys are a wealth of knowledge, and you do see and have seen probably almost everything. We know deals are different every day, but use your brokers, your broker managers, so that we can do the best we can. Any last minute words? I know you have to leave for a closing, so anything else you really want to?
That's a good day.
Make sure?
Yeah, that's
to go to the closings.
No, I so appreciate, again, the opportunity to join you today. This is a tough market, but I think as long as we're all trying to stay ahead of it, continuing with lead generation, continuing to serve our clients, reach out to our sphere of influence, and yes, go to your brokers, absorb all of the training that you can right now to understand how to strengthen your offers. I would still argue this, while the listings are flying off the shelf, educate your sellers on the things to do in advance, get the homes ready, and, hopefully avoid some obstacles going forward.
Okay. Well, Angel Dean, thank you, the managing broker here in Carmel, Indiana, with the FC Tucker office. We appreciate you coming on. We're going to have you back in a couple weeks, if that's okay.
I would love it.
We got a lot more to go. So you're going to be on we're going to do a summer series, and you're going to be on it.
It'll be so fun. It'll be so
Summer
fun.
series for the real
Can
estate.
we do it by a pool, please?
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
Well,
I
hey,
like
we're going to
that.
do the second half of the show. We're going to let Angel go to her closing, and we'll be right back with you in just a few moments. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
We're back. Thank you to Angel Dean, FC Tucker, managing broker in Carmel, Indiana. We're back with Shelly Walters with FC Tucker and Kyle Morse with FC Tucker. Kyle, let's start off with you for the stats this week, or in the last 7 days. Give it to us. Tell us what's going on in the Fishers market. Let's start off with Fishers.
So, I mean, it's been low anyways, but it was low over the past week because you've got Easter and Passover, and you had a lot of holidays this past week. I know in Hamilton
It's always
County,
a low week.
Yeah, and then you got spring breaks finishing up,
Absolutely.
right? For Fishers and Carmel and everything. So in Fishers, we had 18 go on the market, anywhere from 235 to 700. I did notice in both Fishers and Noblesville, there was a lot of houses that went on the market in between 200 and 325, which makes me really happy.
Yeah, that's
talking
good.
about
First-time home buyers.
First-time home buyers, there's actually some more inventory out there.
Right.
8 of those are still active. 10 of them pended. There's 23 total that actually pended over the past 7 days. There's 71 active in Fishers, which is pretty kind of steady state where we've been the past couple of weeks, super low. I mean, it's a little bit lower.
It is super low.
It's low. Days on market is kind of high, but that's just because I had a bunch of outliers.
41?
Is it 41 right now? Which actually, if you look for all of Marion County, like, so, you know, we've got this thing here saying median days on market is actually 6, right? And so in Noblesville, we had 19 go on the market. 10 of them are still active, so 9 pended.
Wow.
19 total actually pended last week. So to go back to that, so I mean, we had no change in inventory, so we had as many go on the market as actually pended.
Okay.
Anywhere from 255 to 1.1 million. There's 70 active in Noblesville, and their average days on market is 15. So to a point like that,
They're turning.
We were talking a couple weeks ago how Noblesville was actually kind of high, but it was because there was a bunch of outliers, but their actual median was really, really low. And now, as we've always talked, like that's starting to even out a little bit. So I don't know, inventory's low. I know that nationally they predicted, you know, I mean, you got the spring season, but like the real kind of summer selling season to start April 16th through the 22nd.
This week we'll pick up some listings, but the week after that, it's really going to take off, don't you think, Shelly?
Yep. Especially with like 30-day closings and stuff, you're starting to get towards, you know, that's just when people want to move is when it's
Normal market. So that's what we got for Fishers and Noblesville?
Yep.
Okay. Shelly,
Okay,
let's
so
kick it off with Carmel.
Yeah, so Carmel, again, talking about the fact that it was a Good Friday, Easter weekend, all of that.
Right.
In Carmel, 17 hit the market, and 7 of those pended, only 1 new build. In the 7-day market, median was 9 and average was 39. So still kind of spread out there with those outliers. Active currently in Carmel are 111, 31 are new builds. So we're getting a little bit more in Carmel in the new build section. The price point was is currently active 152, which is a condo, all the way to 1.3 million. And sorry, backwards. That is the sold numbers. The sold numbers, 111 sold in the past 30 days. 31 of those were new builds. And then the average days for sales was 40, so no change over the past 7 days. And median was 11, so we're still kind of staying the same over 30 days in the past 7 days on the days on market. Currently in Carmel, there are only 58 homes for sale. 24 are new builds.
Wow.
I wonder how many of those are the EPCON community that's going in off of Keystone, because that's really kind of a ton of it right
North End, you know, stuff
North
like
End,
that.
right, with the Old Town Design
So
Group.
we only have 20 or 34 available in any price point, and that would be between 230 and 3.9.
It's going to be interesting to look at these numbers today compared to 2 weeks from today when we do the show.
Yeah.
It should only
It's going to be a different shot.
It should only go up.
Of course.
Obviously, spring break's over, Easter's over. It's time to speed up a little bit. Westfield, only 20 hit the market. 10 of those pended. 23 days average, 6 median. And none of those were new builds, and we know they're very heavy in new builds in Westfield. Active currently in Westfield is 142, but 83 of those are new builds.
Wow.
So not very many resales available there. In the past 30 days, 135 homes sold. 72 of those were new builds. So again, Westfield's just heavy on new builds. And then the average in the past 30 days was 48. The median was 13. So we've gone down to 6 as a median in the past 7 days. So days on market are kind of speeding up in Westfield. Zionsville, 9 hit the market. 5 of those sold. Only 1 was a new build. The past 7 days, average days on market was 5. Median was 1.
Wow.
So Zionsville with no, there's only 34 active there. 12 are new builds. So again, if you're a seller in Zionsville, it's time to get your house on the market. It is a huge seller.
Because you're going to get a lot of money at this point.
Yep.
I mean, there's nothing for sale.
No, there's nothing for sale. So just the solds, there were 32 that sold in the past 30 days. Average days on the market, 33, median 5. So yes, houses are selling very, very quickly in Zionsville. So that's a town, if you're literally thinking about selling at all in Zionsville, yes, put it on the market.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, hey, it looks like it's really bleak out here when it comes to inventory, and the buyers are low right now. So I think everything's going to start,
Yeah, but
spring break is over. Spring break is over. We're going to start getting people to start asking about homes. It always happens this way every year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
We
you
still
guys,
got stuff though.
yeah.
I mean, I knew this weekend would be, as a seller, it might be a little bit harder, but we got under contract with a buyer because I knew there wouldn't be as many buyers this weekend. So we went out. We got a really good property. So you gotta know the market and what you're getting into, and it's
Yeah, it was
went out
less
Saturday.
competitive in this
Yeah.
past weekend. I did too get an offer accepted, and what I'm really excited about is she's a first-time home buyer and also was not cash, and the seller allowed her to purchase the home even though there were cash offers on the table.
Gotcha.
She allowed her to have a home. And that's one thing I've talked about before. Please talk to your sellers about looking into who's purchasing the home and getting the opportunity for someone to purchase a home instead of the commercial
Absolutely.
people.
Well, here's another thing. This Thursday, I'm going to do Broad Ripple, Meridian Kessler, downtown Indianapolis inventory. And I'm going to be announcing the interest rates. I'll be doing that on my own this Thursday. So we'll post that as a sub show for this week. Kyle Morris, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, how can they reach out to you, sir?
So it's Morris Property Group with FC Tucker. My phone number is 317-649-5122.
Shelly, how would somebody get a hold of you, please?
You can reach me on my cell phone, 317-201-2601. Shelly Realtors, Realty Group.
Okay, everybody. Hey, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you.